#everyone feared the billionaire, but the new janitor's single dad made a difference when he stepped in. The security guard's hand trembled as he reached for the intercom. "Mr. Blackwood is coming down. Everyone to their stations." A collective shudder rippled through the lobby of Blackwood Tower as employees scattered like startled birds, straightening ties and smoothing skirts. All except one man, Carlos Mendez, who continued methodically mopping the marble floor, his weathered hands steady on the handle as the elevator doors prepared to open. If you're enjoying this story of unexpected courage and the power of human connection, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that remind us what truly matters in life. The elevator chimed, and Marcus Blackwood emerged like a storm cloud in a tailored suit. At 45, the tech billionaire's reputation for ruthlessness preceded him everywhere. Employees had been fired for making eye contact, or so the rumors went. His cold gray eyes swept the lobby, cataloging imperfections, until they landed on Carlos, the only person who hadn't frozen in place. "You. The floor is still wet." Blackwood's voice cut through the silence. Carlos looked up, his kind brown eyes meeting Blackwood's icy stare. "Yes, sir. Just finishing up. Been here since 4 a.m. to make sure everything shines for the day." He smiled, actually smiled, at the man everyone feared. That moment would change everything at Blackwood Tower, though no one knew it yet. Carlos Mendez had started working at Blackwood Enterprises just 3 weeks earlier. At 42, he wasn't supposed to be mopping floors for a living. He'd once been a respected architectural engineer until his wife Elena's illness drained their savings and eventually took her life, leaving him to raise their daughter Lucia alone. The recession had eliminated his position, and after months of rejections, Carlos had taken the only job available, night janitor at the most intimidating building in the city. "Poppy, why do you have to work at night now?" 8-year-old Lucia had asked, her small face pinched with worry as she clutched her worn stuffed rabbit. "Because, mi corazón," Carlos had answered, tucking her into bed, "sometimes life gives us detours. But we keep moving forward, with dignity and gratitude. Besides," he'd added with a wink, "I get to be with you after school now." What Carlos didn't tell his daughter was how the other janitors had warned him about Marcus Blackwood. "Man's got ice water in his veins," they'd said. "Lost his family in an accident 15 years ago and hasn't been human since. Just stay invisible when he's around." But Carlos had never been good at invisibility. His mother had taught him that every person deserved acknowledgement, regardless of their status. So when Blackwood stormed through the lobby that fateful morning, Carlos had done the unthinkable, he treated him like a human being. The following day, Carlos was called to the executive floor. The other maintenance staff exchanged knowing glances. No one got summoned to the 50th floor unless they were being terminated. "Mr. Mendez," Blackwood's executive assistant said with practiced neutrality, "Mr. Blackwood would like to see you in his office." Carlos straightened his uniform and entered the vast corner office with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Blackwood stood with his back to the door, hands clasped behind him. "You have a daughter." It wasn't a question. Carlos blinked in surprise. "Yes, sir. Lucia. She's 8. Blackwood turned, his expression unreadable. "I saw her picture in your locker during the security sweep. You're raising her alone?" "Since my wife passed 3 years ago, yes." Something flickered across Blackwood's face, so brief Carlos almost missed it. "I understand you have an engineering background." Carlos shifted uncomfortably. "I was an architectural engineer for 15 years before the downsizing." Blackwood nodded once, decisively. "I'm reassigning you. We have a position in building operations that better suits your qualifications. It includes daytime hours and a significant pay increase." Carlos stood stunned. "Sir, This isn't charity, Mendez. I don't do charity. This is business. Wasting qualified personnel on menial tasks is inefficient." Blackwood turned back to the window. That will be all. As Carlos left the office in a daze, he didn't see Blackwood open his desk drawer and stare at the faded photograph of a young woman and a small boy, a family lost to time and tragedy. Word spread quickly through Blackwood Tower. The Ice King had shown mercy, or perhaps pragmatism, to the new janitor. But that was just the beginning. Over the following weeks, employees noticed subtle changes in their fearsome boss. He still demanded excellence, still made split-second decisions that transformed industries, but something was different. He'd begun acknowledging people in the elevator. Once, he even asked about someone's new baby. The catalyst became clear when Carlos was spotted having lunch with Blackwood in the company cafeteria, an unprecedented event that caused such a stir that 3 people spilled their coffee. "My daughter's school is having a science fair," Carlos was saying, his hands animated as he explained Lucia's project on renewable energy. "She's building a miniature solar-powered car. The motor calibration will be crucial," Blackwood replied, actually engaged in the conversation. "Has she considered using a capacitor to store excess energy?" Their unlikely friendship blossomed from that point, puzzling everyone who witnessed it. The maintenance staff theorized that Carlos had saved Blackwood's life somehow. The executive team suspected Carlos must be a long-lost relative. The truth was both simpler and more profound. In Carlos, Blackwood saw something he'd lost: authenticity, resilience, and the capacity to find joy despite life's cruelties. In Blackwood, Carlos saw not a tyrant but a man hollowed out by grief, someone who needed reminding that connection was still possible. The real turning point came 6 weeks later when Carlos received a call from Lucia's school. She had fallen during recess and broken her arm. With no family nearby and his supervisor out sick, Carlos faced an impossible choice between his daughter and his job. Desperate, he knocked on Blackwood's office door. "My daughter's hurt, sir. I need to go, but my supervisor isn't here to approve emergency leave." Blackwood stood immediately. "I'll drive you." The executive floor watched in astonishment as Marcus Blackwood, who once cancelled a board meeting because of a light drizzle, grabbed his keys and escorted Carlos to the parking garage. At the hospital, nurses and doctors did double takes as the notorious billionaire sat in the waiting room beside the janitor, awkwardly offering coffee from the vending machine. "She'll be all right," Blackwood said stiffly, unused to offering comfort. Carlos nodded, his worry evident. "She's strong, like her mother." After a pause, he added, "Thank you for this. Most bosses wouldn't." "I'm not most bosses," Blackwood interrupted, then fell silent before adding quietly, "I had a son once. Alexander. He would have been about your daughter's age now." The admission hung in the air between them, the first time Blackwood had spoken of his family to anyone at the company. When Lucia emerged with a bright pink cast, her eyes widened at the tall, imposing man beside her father. "Are you my dad's boss?" she asked directly, unintimidated. "I am," Blackwood replied, his usual commanding tone softened. "He says you're very smart but that you forget to smile." Lucia's honesty made Carlos wince, but to his surprise, Blackwood's mouth twitched upward. "Your father is a wise man," Blackwood said, then awkwardly added, "Would you like me to sign your cast?" That evening marked another first. Marcus Blackwood joined Carlos and Lucia for dinner at their modest apartment. He sat stiffly at first in their small kitchen, looking out of place in his expensive suit among the cheerful but worn furnishings. But as Lucia chattered about her science project and Carlos served his late wife's recipe for arroz con pollo, something in Blackwood began to thaw. "Mr. Blackwood, do you know about solar panels?" Lucia asked, spreading her project notes across the table. "I own 3 solar energy companies," he replied, then hesitated before adding, "and you can call me Marcus." By the time he left that night, Marcus Blackwood had signed Lucia's cast, helped refine her science project design, and experienced his first home-cooked meal in over a decade. The changes at Blackwood Enterprises accelerated after that night. Marcus began implementing family-friendly policies that industry analysts couldn't explain. Flexible working hours. Emergency childcare services. A substantial donation to the children's hospital where Lucia had been treated. Employees who had once feared entering the elevator with Blackwood now found themselves answering questions about their families, their aspirations, their ideas for company improvements. The corporate culture transformed gradually from one of fear to one of cautious innovation and collaboration. 6 months after Carlos first mopped the lobby floor, Blackwood Enterprises announced a new charitable foundation focused on supporting single-parent families, with Carlos Mendez named as its director. "I don't understand," Carlos said when Marcus offered him the position. "I'm not qualified to run a foundation." "You understand what these families need better than any consultant I could hire," Marcus replied. "You have the engineering mind to build systems and the heart to make them human. That's a rare combination, Carlos." The press buzzed with speculation about Blackwood's apparent personality transplant. Business magazines that had once labeled him the Iceman of Tech now ran features on his company's revolutionary workplace culture. Few knew the truth, that a janitor's simple act of treating him like a person had cracked open a door Marcus had sealed shut 15 years earlier. On the 1-year anniversary of Carlos joining the company, Marcus invited him and Lucia to his penthouse, a sleek, impersonal space with spectacular views but few signs of being actually lived in. "I have something to show you," Marcus said, leading them to a room he unlocked with a key he wore around his neck. Inside was a perfectly preserved child's bedroom, model airplanes hanging from the ceiling, bookshelves filled with science books and adventure stories, a small desk with half-finished projects still laid out as if their creator had just stepped away momentarily. "Alexander's room," Marcus said quietly. "He was 7 when the accident happened. My wife, Sarah, was driving them to his science camp. A truck driver fell asleep at the wheel." Lucia moved instinctively to Marcus's side and slipped her small hand into his. "That's why you helped with my science project," she said with a child's perfect clarity. Marcus nodded, his composure cracking slightly. "I couldn't save them. So I built walls instead, around myself, around this room, around everything that mattered. Until you and your father reminded me what I'd locked away." Carlos understood then what no business analyst or executive had grasped, that Marcus Blackwood's transformation wasn't a strategic pivot or a public relations move. It was a man finding his way back to humanity through an unexpected friendship. That evening, as they shared a meal in Marcus's penthouse, the first time he'd entertained guests there since the accident, Carlos watched as Lucia taught the billionaire how to make paper airplanes, filling the austere space with laughter. "You know," Carlos said quietly, "Elena, my wife, used to say that grief is just love with nowhere to go." Marcus looked up from the paper airplane in his hands. "Your wife was a wise woman." "She was. And she would have said you found somewhere for that love to go now." 2 years after Carlos first mopped the floors of Blackwood Tower, the building itself was transformed. The once intimidating lobby now featured a community science center where local schoolchildren could experiment with new technologies. The corporate culture that had once been built on fear now fostered innovation through collaboration. And Marcus Blackwood, once the most feared man in the business world, had become known for his mentorship programs for children who had lost parents. The most significant change, however, wasn't visible on any corporate report or magazine feature. It was evident in the way Marcus joined Carlos and Lucia for Sunday dinners, in how he attended Lucia's science competitions with the nervous pride of an uncle, in the photographs that now adorned his once sterile office, not just of his lost family, but of his new one as well. On Lucia's 11th birthday, Marcus arrived at their apartment with an oversized gift. "It's Alexander's telescope," he explained as Lucia unwrapped it with reverent hands. He would have wanted another child to explore the stars with it. That night, the three of them stood on the apartment building's roof, gazing at constellations through Alexander's telescope. Carlos watched as Marcus patiently explained the night sky to Lucia, his daughter's face alight with wonder and the billionaire's alight with something that had been missing for 15 years, purpose beyond profit, connection beyond commerce. Sometimes, Carlos thought, remembering his first day mopping the lobby floor. The most powerful act is simply seeing the humanity in another person when everyone else has forgotten to look. As the years passed, the story of Marcus Blackwood's transformation became corporate legend. Business schools studied the remarkable culture shift at Blackwood Enterprises. Few knew the catalyst had been a janitor who refused to be invisible, who treated a feared billionaire like a human being deserving of respect. On Carlos's 50th birthday, Marcus hosted a celebration at Blackwood Tower. As employees gathered, many of whom had been personally mentored by Carlos through the foundation, Marcus raised a glass. To Carlos Mendez, he said, his once cold eyes now warm with genuine affection, who taught me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars but in connections. Who reminded me that sometimes, the person who changes your life isn't the one with the most impressive title, but the one with the most generous heart. Carlos, now an executive director rather than a janitor but still the same humble man at his core, smiled at his daughter, now a brilliant teenager headed for engineering school, and at Marcus, the feared billionaire who had become family. To second chances, Carlos replied, raising his own glass. And to remembering that behind every title, janitor or billionaire, there's simply a person trying to find their way. In the end, the most valuable thing Carlos Mendez had mopped from the floors of Blackwood Tower wasn't dirt, but the layers of isolation that had kept a grieving man from reconnecting with the world. And the most valuable thing Marcus Blackwood had given wasn't a job or financial security, but the reminder that family can be found in the most unexpected places. Sometimes, the greatest transformations begin with the smallest acts of human dignity, like a janitor who wasn't afraid to smile at the man everyone else feared.